What's up, everyone? Thanks for joining me for Real Talk NFT. I'm your host, Brian. You know my amazing co-host, Joe. We have a really special guest here for you today. It's the co-founder of Boson Protocol, Justin Banon. And Boson Protocol is solving a very unique issue in the world of Web3. They're enabling tokenization, transfer, and trading of a physical item as a redeemable NFT. Essentially, they're tokenizing real-world assets. Justin, really appreciate you jumping on the podcast today. How you been?
A pleasure to be here. Yeah, really good.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you jumping on. Excited to talk about the company and everything you've been researching and you've been building. But before we dive deep into the details, why don't you give us a little bit of a background, how you got into the world of Web3 and, how it's been treating you?
Sure. I started out as kind of a bit geeky, as I ended up doing physics at university, did a physics degree. And so that was always my kind of interest in, how things work, etc. But then somehow I started working for a company called Priority Pass, who were not tokenizing, but digitizing products and services like in the travel space. So whether that's like duty free or airport lounges, etc. And in parallel to that, I ended up doing a master's in digital and did a digital transformation of this company. Took them from about 50 million to about $1 billion turnover, transformed them into basically like a platform business model that was digitizing physical things. And so that was this kind of first concept of how do you digitally represent physical items so that you can trade them online. And then I ended up doing, a second master's in crypto. And I thought, okay, well, I've taken these physical assets from paper and plastic to digital. What happens if they become, if you move them onto a blockchain? And that, the key thing that I understood was that with blockchain is more than digitizing, right? With blockchain, you get these things called strong commitments, right? So if I send you a Bitcoin, it's different to me paying by MasterCard and it's about, and so if we were going to tokenize a physical asset, it's got to be more than an IOU written on a blockchain, because then, how do you know that you're actually going to get the physical item, right? It has to be that there's a strong commitment that if you have, like, let's say a token representing the physical, that either you're going to get that physical item or you're going to get your money back. And that was the problem I identified. It was a pretty hard problem. And at the time, people didn't know if it could be solved. In fact, we had a lot of early on people say, it's impossible to solve this and stuff, until we did. And so that's, launched Boson Protocol. We've been building Boson for about 3 years, like product complete now. We've got World Economic Forum technology pioneer status. And we're just, looking forward to this new bull market and the wave of adoption that's coming.
Very nice. So tell us a little bit more about the protocol and what your overall vision is here. It makes a ton of sense to me. And we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast about just tokenizing real world assets for to authenticate products and to store them and ship and just make it easier overall. And it just seems natural to have a redeemable NFT to secure these physical items. What was really like step one, like to get your hands on these real world assets, to connect with, I suppose, like merchants, to have them want to, adapt and evolve into utilizing NFTs? How did that whole thought process come about?
Well, I mean, like I said, I got this kind of physics background. So it was this understanding that, I'd run a big platform that was digitizing real world assets. So basically what we would do is we would take a product or a service and issue a digital token. And then that digital token would, our big customers were MasterCard and Visa and Amex. So they would then go and give this to their customers and say, okay, you've got access to a lounge. You can go and have a meal at a restaurant. You get this duty free. But so why is blockchain any different to that? We could just write that same promise on an NFT and give it to you. But blockchains are different because they give strong commitments, right? So when you've got a Bitcoin in your wallet, it's not like having, $10,000 in your bank account that can just get reversed, right? It's a strong commitment. It's immutable. It's irreversible. It's trust minimized. All these things. So how, for there to be any point in doing it on a blockchain, you'd have to bring those properties. Otherwise, you'd just be doing standard centralized systems with centralized trust on a blockchain. Now, I think the majority of sort of use cases still are exactly that, right? Centralized systems written on a blockchain, utterly pointless. You may as well just use a centralized server. But so what we had to do is have a way that, and it's called the physical asset oracle problem. If I tokenize my car and you buy the token and send me the money, that's great. How do you know that you're going to get that token swap for the car, right? How do you know that you're not just going to be defaulted?
Right.
And that's the core problem that we solved. And how to do that without having to trust the seller or an intermediary, because that problem is solved. If you've got two untrusting parties, buyer and seller, and they want to do commerce online, that problem is either such, it's often solved by having an intermediary like an Amazon or an eBay, right? But Amazon and eBay, what do? They abuse their market power to just basically eat, certainly Amazon, to just eat the industry, charge outsized profits, rip off sellers, all of that, and have all this market power. So how can we put a piece of code in the middle where, buyer and seller don't need to trust each other, but can trust the code will ensure fair exchange? And that's like a fundamental economics problem. And so that's the problem we solved. Initially, me and my co-founder, then we raised, quite a bit of, funds, and then we hired literally the best team. I mean, I think that, our biggest achievement is hiring just such an incredible team. So then, so V2 of Boson Protocol was built by like a protocol designer from Ethereum Foundation who just happened to have written a paper on a similar mechanism. All the techno-legal innovation was designed by a couple of top blockchain lawyers, including one, Dr. Primavera de Filippi, who wrote Blockchain and the Law and teaches blockchain law at Harvard, and just top game theorists and stuff. And so what we built is a protocol that basically solves this fair exchange problem with code. Yeah.
Can we take a peek behind the curtain and just high level explain how that may work for an average person coming in that wants to use the protocol? Is it an escrow of sort? Do they have to deposit, a little bit of funds to really back the transaction? How's that work?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of fundamental, and some of the academic work I've done is kind of describe some fundamental trade-offs. And so one fundamental trade-off is if the sort of the requirements are that two untrusting parties can transact without the need for like a trusted intermediary, then what happens is a seller makes an offer for, let's say, here's my car, I'd like to sell it, and we'll sort of publish an offer on Boson, and then a buyer will see that offer and will say, okay, I like that offer. Let me put my money into the protocol. So that money gets locked up in the protocol, and the buyer then receives what we call a redeemable NFT. And that redeemable NFT is now a bearer asset. There's a claim on either the physical item or if the seller defaults on the pot. And so that physical NFT can now be traded and, can kind of go around Web3, etc. Eventually someone is going to redeem it. And so then they go back to the protocol with this NFT, say, okay, burn my NFT in lieu of the physical. And, one of the big design upgrades in V2 by, these amazing team was to make it an optimistic protocol. So that means a bit like Amazon or eBay, they will send the stuff assuming everything is fine. And so the protocol doesn't get involved with the happy path. It only gets involved when there's a problem. If there's a problem, then the buyer has a period of time during which they can they can trigger a dispute. And that dispute, the first stage is some game theory where the protocol will coordinate between buyer and seller to try and affect this sort of local remedy, to try and, if they both agree on a split of the pot or whatever, then the protocol will execute that split. But failing that, it can go to what we call escalated dispute resolution, where it will go to a dispute resolver. And that's one of the parameters of the offer. And when you're going to purchase from Boson, you need to look at what's the dispute resolution, because that's an option, right? It could be, well, it could be the seller themselves. If you want a trusted version, you completely trust the seller, and that's fine if you trust them. And there's plenty of reason to do that for some. But then it could be, just another party that has a reputation for being fair and independent and does this, and a dispute resolver, all the way to being like a decentralized court. It can plug into things like Kleros, which of course is very, very trust minimized, very decentralized, but more expensive. And so that's the basic mechanism. Now we've just, like last week, launched an upgrade to that mechanism where, there's a challenge that although a primary sale is completely protected by the protocol, if the first buyer were to say, take that NFT and then sell it to a second buyer outside of the protocol, like on OpenSea or something, for the first sale was $100, the second sale was $200. Well, there's only $100 locked up in the protocol. So if the second buyer doesn't receive the physical, they're out of pocket $200, and there's only $100 in the protocol, right? So that is like a partial rug pull, and we kind of solve for that. So now even these secondary sales can go back into the protocol, and therefore everyone is made whole and everyone is protected in the chain. And then you get this additional benefit: if everybody's doing these secondary sales in the chain, you can enforce royalties, creator royalties on secondary sales of physical items, which is like a massive kind of holy grail type thing. So there's all these other, obviously we don't surface the game theory and all of that. We've learned that, right? We like to talk about it, but we just talk about what you can do, right? And hey, this is buyer assurance. You've got, royalties on secondary sales of physicals and stuff like that.
Yeah, you answered a few of my questions there during that talk, just about the redeemable NFT overall, and if somebody could, resell that redeemable NFT and how that looks for the secondary sales, and even touching base on the royalties. Is there a time frame for these NFTs to be redeemed, or is it just endless? And is it variable as well per each NFT?
Yeah, and this is all really kind of pertinent stuff. So yeah, there's a time frame. And there are a couple of, with the design, there's some fundamental trade-offs, which also leads to some challenges. And that kind of leads on to the second protocol that we're building, called Fermion, which takes a different approach to those trade-offs, right? So there are some fundamental trade-offs here. And so the first one is the seller's not getting paid until the dispute period has expired, right? Because that seller can be pseudonymous and still you've got buyer protection. So to enable that pseudonymous, trust minimized, fair exchange, we have to use crypto economics we have to lock up funds in order to be able to, ensure good outcomes. That's capital inefficient, right? So the seller's not getting paid immediately. Now, that's okay with normal commerce transactions, right? So, if you're going to sell, your cap, I don't know, that could be like a $20,000 cap, and I'm just being ignorant.
It's not.
If you're going to sell normal commerce items, then sellers are used to not getting paid for 2-3 weeks from MasterCard or from Amazon. That's normal. So we're within that envelope. Holding funds for that is fine, right? So yeah, there's a dispute period during which the buyer has the opportunity to dispute. If they fail to do anything, it's an optimistic protocol. If they do nothing, which most people do, the seller will get paid after that dispute period. Now, that dispute period can be changed, but there's a minimum amount, because we have this principle that the protocol is unopinionated. It doesn't tell people what to do, other than protecting participants from attack, right? And so if you could collapse that dispute resolution period to sort of 1 second, then the buyer would not practically have any chance to ever raise a dispute, right? So I think that the period, the minimum is like 7 days or something like that. Yeah.
Where did you find the opportunity to launch a Boson? Was there a lot of friction in the Web2 world? Because you mentioned, digitizing assets. Where did you see the biggest need, I would say, for the protocol now today?
Well, for me, it was I'd seen the cycle of digitizing, not tokenizing, but digitizing physical assets in my role as, heading up priority paths. And I saw one of the things I also studied in my first master's was like technology adoption curves. And I saw this technology adoption curve that was like, convince the board to spend $5 million dollars on this new technology, nearly get fired because there was zero adoption, then suddenly bang, like $250 million worth of business in 4 months, like adoption, right? And then of course, if blockchain is the next paradigm of technology, it makes no sense to exchange physical things with the same commitment levels as there's no point going to a blockchain because you get all of these other trade-offs of cost, like difficult of development. If the promise is you have to trust me to honor this token, I may as well send you a text message. I may as well send you an email. I may as well just send you a digital token. It's only meaningful if you leverage this technology with this, it's got basically one superpower, which is the ability to convey strong commitments, right? So that's what we had to do. And I saw this as kind of fundamental, right? It's one of those fundamental layers. It's like, I wrote like an essay on it. It would be like TCP/IP, but for physical real world value, right? So we've got with the internet, it's all about exchanging information. And if we've now got a web of ownership and value transfer, then great if that value is on-chain value, and on-chain value is exchange is native for blockchains. But physical value, there's massive benefits for being able to have a proxy for exchanging physical value with the same strong commitments. And that's the same research thread that I've kind of continued with, a lot of the work that I've been doing as well on the academic side. Yeah.
You've obviously named some major marketplaces out there just in the Web 2 world, like the eBays and the Amazon, and it's an extremely competitive landscape. I mean, there's a reason why there's really one eBay, and that's such a default. What are some of the key incentives to bring developers and businesses over to the protocol, and how are you attracting them? Basically, what's your pitch to some of these businesses?
Well, I mean, it depends who the audience is. I mean, to developers and people that get and understand blockchains, then the need to have just basic strong commitments when exchanging physical assets in the same way as you would if you were, if I exchange a digital NFT with you, it's an atomic transaction. There's no risk of me taking your money. And these are the basics of, now, admittedly, there's a whole load of people building applications within blockchain that are just building, and real world assets is rife with it, that are just building, tokenizing physical assets where you have to trust them, and they're just building that on a blockchain-based platform. But again, we've seen this time and time again with technology adoption, that the initial wave of adoption doesn't truly embrace the properties of the new paradigm, right? We've seen that many, many times. But, an example of that is the first cars had boat tillers, right? They didn't have steering wheels, right? Because that's the kind of paradigm type thing. But, when we're talking to sellers and stuff, it's very much, there has been a very limited business case for doing anything to do with NFTs and stuff during the bear market, because there's been little interest, there's been little money, right? But the reason why you see these massive increases in kind of adoption of this technology when we have a bull market is because suddenly you have a whole demographic of people that are now crypto rich, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Web3 savvy. They know, they understand what real Web3 is, and they want to use authentic Web3 tools, not like, can I say bullshit? You can edit it out.
Yeah.
Not like these bullshit, like, oh, here's an NFT, but you've got to trust me to deliver the physical, right? But they understand the difference between Web3 washing and real Web3. That's the first thing. But then from the seller's point of view, having this demographic that have now made thousands, hundreds of thousands, of dollars worth of value that's now in crypto, that is a massive, kind of revenue generating opportunity. And, we've had people like Tommy Hilfiger, launch on Boson and do activations. And I had a fireside with him,
Right.
and he was like, this is the next wave of technology. And if there's one thing we've learned in fashion, it's, we saw it with the internet. Lots of brands got left behind.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it with mobile. We saw it with social. And unless you stay up with these trends, you just become irrelevant. Unless you move quickly, you just never get the chance to catch up. And so, the internet is changing to an internet of value and ownership. And if you're selling stuff, right, it's a big risk for you not getting involved in that. So I think, it's helping educate these brands. And once they see the opportunity, I mean, a lot of these brands are super interested. It's just they haven't been able to see the ROI, and I think they're quite right. But that is changing, right? You look at the amount of money flooding into crypto now, and you're going to be, we've got this new demographic inflating, crypto rich, Web3 savvy. And, a lot of the money, a lot of the crypto value that they have locked in crypto, people don't want to bring, they don't want to bring that into the fiat system for obvious reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the reasons why you see these booms in NFT sales and all this other stuff is because there's a lot of value locked up with not much to do with it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Boson is like the de facto way to buy physical things directly from crypto without touching the fiat or traditional finance system.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's articles every day talking about how the new generation want more exposure to crypto Web3 than traditional financial assets. We know Hong Kong just approved their Bitcoin ETF. I was in Hong Kong last year. They have crypto stores physically educating people about crypto.
Okay,
So
wow.
it definitely is a paradigm shift. And I'm running a Bitcoin node. I never would have ran a Bitcoin node 2-3 years ago. And just like you said,
How big they are these days then?
How big?
Is that how big a Bitcoin node is these days?
Well, not mining nodes, but yeah, just running your own kind of little wallet there. It's enough.
Okay.
Yeah, about 600 gigs, 700 gigs for the entire blockchain to be downloaded for now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I would like to settle, in more decentralized playing fields, more so now than before. And I imagine I just had a newborn baby. I'm going to teach him about decentralization and the power that brings back to me, and versus giving the power to Amazon, eBay. And there's some difficulty from a lot of guests we bring on about, adoption because of the learning curve. Is a settlement in your own layer one? Is it fiat? You mentioned Boson as a protocol, catering to this Web3. Is there a fiat on ramp, or is it just crypto for the what you're providing?
So I mean, firstly, yeah, we're protocol deployed on Ethereum mainnet and also Polygon for now. And we've got a couple of other chains that we'll be deploying on over the course of this year. We've put a lot of effort into. I mean, there's kind of. We have one of the kind of strap lines we have is like real Web3 with Web2 UX. And I mean, there is a bit of a trade-off there, but it's not a hard trade-off. It's hard to be both decentralized and have great UX. So we've done, a lot with, kind of wallet technology to make it easy, for customers to not have to sort of get too involved with blockchains. We've got like, we've launched a whole load of widgets that just plug into websites that enable people to use this technology and just install with a couple of lines of code. We've just launched a Boson app in partnership with WooCommerce, who are like the largest e-commerce store. So they've got like 4 million, largest e-commerce platform. They've got like 4 million stores. We're now in their app, signed like a strategic partnership with them. And again, that's kind of very drag and drop and very easy. So we put a lot, we're fully decentralized under the hood. And we put a lot of effort into making that user experience to try and achieve this kind of real Web3, Web2 UX. And I think that is kind of like the holy grail, right? Because it's so much easier to build like Web2 products that, go and do that if that's what you're doing, right? And okay, it's possible to build real Web3 products, but no one's going to use them. I think that sweet spot is going to be, trying to combine the two, recognizing that there's a lot of trade-offs there, but so many great infrastructure companies and so many great, kind of companies that you can kind of plug in and use some of their technology to do this bridging, that it's a lot easier than it was, say, 3 years ago.
Yeah, that was honestly like my next question, just understanding how this is like your goal is open decentralization, but how's that going to benefit the user experience in the user interface? So that was just an excellent, call out there.
I mean, look, my thesis, I kind of got into all of this through studying, I guess, the common thread for me is this kind of like physics, and then like the physics of business, which is like business models. And the thesis I've held for a long time is that if you had the option to go and catch a taxi where instead of it being Uber and the taxi driver's on minimum wage and Uber's taking whatever they take, 30% or whatever, you could hail a ride where that driver is a part owner of that network. He's getting a reasonably decent, maybe you're a token holder as well, and you're all sharing in the value that you create. And the user experience was the same as Uber. Who would choose Uber, right? And I just think that is just, an obvious, but you have to have the UX, because with all of these Web2 platforms, we are the product, right? We are kind of like milked for all the value, and, all participants are, it's all about value extraction. That's the job. I mean, I used to run a platform. It's about value extraction. And this different paradigm where we get to share in the value we create is so much more powerful as long as the UX is comparable, right? And you haven't got crappy UX. And so I think that's adoption is that equation, right?
Yeah, you're doing a lot of work that's going to bring a lot of people, a lot of value, including myself in the Web3 world. So I appreciate that, the whole narrative of DePIN right now, decentralized mobile networks, gaming. And I brought on a previous guest, and I was like, do these things actually work? And yeah, they do. The DePIN narrative actually works. People play games on decentralized servers and nodes. People are utilizing cell phone servers on decentralized servers and nodes. And, having a marketplace just makes sense for, reward assets. And you're the first guest that we had on here to talk about reward assets, because we're deep in the NFT landscape, which is vastly different. So when Brian says, "Hey Joe, you have a lot of reward assets tied with NFTs," that's a lot different. That's utilization of Web2 services that's providing me value. But having the actual product with a digital twin is something that I'm excited about, because I would like to transact on that layer, and I don't think I've seen anyone else do that in a truly decentralized way. So hats off to you.
Yeah, would you mind highlighting some of like the major businesses you work with? I know you made a call out to like Tommy Hilfiger, but we'd love to know a little bit about like what people could find in the protocol and some of the major names.
Sure. I mean, well, as I mentioned, Tommy Hilfiger, we've worked with a whole load of NFT projects, brands like we worked also with Hogan and a couple of other brands like that. As I said, we just worked with WooCommerce. We're also we're also launching a separate protocol that's what we call like an extended community ecosystem. So it will have a separate token and it's called Fermion, and that will deal with where I said that Boson is this optimistic protocol. So, we assume that everything's going to be fine, and you send the goods and then dispute afterwards. For certain types of goods, that isn't good enough, right? So you need to do some. You wouldn't send like a Rolex watch in the post, and so for that we're launching a separate protocol, but it's built on Boson. Boson is the first layer of technology of tokenization called Fermion. And so that is going to be not just for kind of watches, collectibles, wine, but can also be extended to property, commodities. So all of those entrepreneurs that are out there building real world asset protocols, and there's a lot, it's crazy, right? Tequila expert, he's building a protocol. Property expert, he's building a protocol. We're basically building this kind of kit that people can just take our technology and build on top of it. So we're launching that mid-year. And as part of that launch, we will be tokenizing and fractionalizing $1 million Dolce & Gabbana suit. So it first gets tokenized in Boson and then fractionalized in Fermion, which is, so that's going to be quite a big, bang and PR opportunity and stuff like that. So and we've got quite a lot of stuff, coming in the pipeline. I guess part of our strategy during the last, crypto winter was put our heads down and build, keep our powder dry, excuse me, because the time to launch products and partnerships really is in this rising market. And we just took that decision to just kind of, store some stuff up and then launch and bang, bang, bang. And for us, it's kind of across Boson and Fermion, it's just crazy. The marketing team are just like pedaling, because it's just every other week, it's like one big thing after the other now. So we've kind of saved stuff up to launch into this market.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing it the right way. Just talking with you, obviously, you're extremely savvy business person, obviously extremely intelligent, and you're building something that we all see the vision for and have a big picture, but to actually put it together and have a working product that users are going to be able to interact with and feel comfortable with is just really amazing stuff. So hats off to you. And just to call out that you were building in the bear market, that's something you hear all the time, but most Web3 companies really aren't building in the bear market. They're no one's asking them about, but right when the bull starts coming, all of a sudden that, they're hiring and their social media is active, and it's like exactly what have you been doing for the past few years. So extremely encouraging to see what you're building. You have this big picture, and it really sounds like you really have the opportunity to become the market leader in Web3. How can our audience find you if you want them to find you? In addition to that, how they can get linked with the protocol and just everything that you're building?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my Twitter is @Justin Banon. And then for Boson Protocol, it's @Boson Protocol. And then for Fermion, it's @Fermion Protocol. And you've got links to everything there, website. But those are kind of the main channels. Obviously, we've got Discords and Telegrams and all of that good stuff. And yeah, if people follow us there, they can keep up to date with, all the great stuff we're doing.
Awesome. Well, Justin, thanks for jumping on the podcast today. I know the audience is going to be very excited to learn more, and we appreciate it. And hopefully we'll have you on real soon as you probably take on the big bad giants of the Web 2, the Amazons and the eBays of the world. And we're talking. We interviewed Justin Banon, the multi-billionaire who changed the Web3 face.
Yeah, well, I'm always open to a cage fight with Bezos. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you again.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, guys.